for joining us today. Today we'll be interviewing Michael de Miranda. Dr. Michael A. de Miranda is a distinguished member in the field of education, notably known for his contributions in STEM education, cognitive learning, and instructional methodologies. Currently serving as the Dean, Rita Haynes Endowed Chair, and Professor at the School of Education and Human Development at Texas A&M University. Dr. de Miranda's research focuses on the development of young STEM educators for the future of our profession, specifically in learning, cognition, and instruction in engineering and technology education. Education stands at the core of Dr. de Miranda's journey, marked by his completion of a graduate degree in educational psychology from the University of California. Dr. de Miranda's impact expands beyond the academics at the university level into multiple leadership roles across various professional associations, including positions with the National Technology Education Collegiate Association, Council on Technology Teacher Education, and the American Society for Engineering Education. Through these roles, Dr. de Miranda has been an instrumental force in guiding the direction of technology and engineering education. His reach extends globally through consulting and workshops, where he has been to over 13 countries as a keynote speaker, sharing insights and shaping conversations around engineering education, cognitive learning, and interdisciplinary pedagogies. Dr. de Miranda's legacy in the field of education is one that is marked by innovation, dedication, and a tireless pursuit to educate a new generation of STEM professionals that will be prepared to thrive in our ever-changing technological world. His visionary leadership and intense commitment to shape the future of education is leaving a substantial mark on the field and the countless students and educators he influences along the way. Thank you, Dr. de Miranda, for being here with us today, and we've been looking forward to this conversation with you.
Well, thank you and good morning. Thank you for those kind words. I wish my mother could have heard those. But you did very well. Thank you so much, and thank you for the privilege of your presence today. I look forward to a nice conversation with you.
Cool, awesome. So for our interview today, we have a few just questions for you that are focused or based around your chapter 22 from the Bloomsbury Handbook. So we'll go through those, and then we'll also have two more questions probably towards the end that are going to be asked by our classmates, other pre-service technology teachers as well. So just kind of to get us started here, we have a question based on the shifting forces that are impacting engineering and technology education. So that question is, how would you design a curriculum or learning environment that embraces the three dimensions of scientific and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts and core ideas, while also maybe incorporating elements from social, societal, and humanities perspectives?
Yeah, thank you for that question. When you look at the elements of learning that you just described, I begin to think about the difficulty of a young engineering and technology teacher trying to establish a curriculum that would touch on those concepts. Now, let's take it a little bit at a time. I don't think that the assumption is that we have to do them all at the same time, okay? But the teacher needs to be able to develop, and it's a skill. Young technology educators will learn this skill as they progress. And it is a skill of what I call associational fluency, okay? Let me give you an example, okay? When you're designing a curriculum to touch on each of those, the teacher needs to be able to seize on associational fluent moments. For example, let's say that we are talking about, I'll give you an example that I did in my classroom when I taught, okay? We did a crash car dummy project, okay? And we designed design safety systems to keep my egg intact during a crash, right? And we'd put the egg inside of a plastic baggie so it wouldn't make a mess in the classroom. And we used to use, we remember those CO2 rockets that people would showed up? Well, we put the rockets, but we put them in a car, all right? And the students designed a car and it shot down across a lane, a controlled lane, okay? And then it hit a barrier at the end and their egg was supposed to survive, okay? So we use a design problem to design a crash car dummy protection system for your egg. The egg could be your grandmother, your grandfather, whatever you want it to be. But really the principles are mass and motion, right? Acceleration and deacceleration, okay? And force. Force equals mass times acceleration. The lesson here, it has a force, right? But you are a separate force. You're a passenger. When the vehicle hits an object, you as a second force keep going, right? So I want the students to think, why do you put your seatbelt on? Well, because I'm an object in motion, and physics tells me that the force, if I hit the dashboard, if I hit the windshield, right? Well, design a curriculum that has those kind of social, physical, and design elements in there. It becomes very rich, okay? But the challenge is, how, as a young technology education teacher, how am I ever going to think of all of that? Right? How am I going to now I just gave you an example and you're going, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know, I can teach physics, I can teach math, right? We can do the formula, F equals, right, mass M times A, right? We could do the math, we could do the physics, we could do the engineering, we could do the technology design project, we could do the car design project, we could design a restraint system project, a propulsion system project, right? It doesn't have to be shot out by a CO2 cartridge. It could be going downhill, you know, whatever. So you've got technology, you've got design, you've got problem solving, you've got math, you've got physics, and then you've got social aspects of it, right? Okay. Right now you said, doggone it, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? Because the cognitive load on young educators might be too high. We may be expecting too much. So we have to be careful when we design a curriculum with specific learning outcomes that the teachers will be able to achieve those learning outcomes based on their capacity to connect the STEM dots. We just connected the STEM dots in this conversation right now, right? We connected a physics dot, we connected a math dot, right? We connected a design problem dot, we connected an engineering problem, right? Dot. And then it even went further, because what are you going to make the little vehicle out of, or the sled out of? So they could talk about materials, right? Tools and machines, processes, all kinds of things. You could do it, you could require them to sketch, right? You could require them to draw, you could require them to weigh the mass of their vehicle, right? Because you have to know what the mass is, right? The M, so we got to weigh it. How many grams is it, right? So, okay, so you're sitting there probably going, oh my God, that was such a simple, I could do that, right? And that touches all of the cross-disciplinary and cross-cutting concepts, right? But the problem that we have to come to grips with is that as young educators, right, we have to equip you with the ability to be STEM fluent. And I have solutions for that later on in our discussion. Well, what if we can't do that? What do we do? I'll give it to you later, but that's the goal.
Perfect. So I lost my train of thought a little bit there, but what I was saying was how our current robotics course relates societally to here in Newfoundland, as we had to design our own RV and so that it could go underwater and we could finish his task that related to the oil field here in Newfoundland, where we had to remove a cap from a pipe underwater as well.
Right.
So
and when you're doing that, right, here's the associational fluency that I'm talking about that we have to develop, right?
Yeah.
Why do we need to do that anyway? Why? I mean, well, because if we don't do it, there are environmental impacts, right? What are the environmental impacts? What are the societal pieces, right? The other thing is it ethical? Right? What are the ethics involved in what we're doing?
Yeah.
So we don't often think of those because we're focused on the underwater autonomous vehicle, right? The UAV. We're focused on the UAV and we're focused on the design and we're focused on the science. But when we build, say, environmentally conscious citizens, right, that are technologically literate as well, it's the teacher that needs to bring these things up. And as young educators, you're going, oh my gosh, how am I going to think of all of these things? Well, you will get there, and they will come to you. They will come to you fluently, right? But it's a cognitive development skill in iSTEM. I call it, in the chapter, I call it iSTEM PCK, right? Integrated STEM pedagogical content knowledge. Yeah.
So, yeah, we do. So we're actually moving on now. We have a question related to the STEM content knowledge. So this question is, how would you approach the implementation of interdisciplinary learning, incorporating elements such as team problem solving, project-based learning, and open knowledge sharing to foster critical thinking and reflection skills among students?
Yeah. Great question. Now I'm going to delve into what I think could be a solution to that. It's an inventive solution that I have actually done and written some manuscripts about. But I tackled the problem from the previous question. How do you solve that problem? If I was to implement, let's say, do you have middle schools there, middle grade or high schools?
Yep.
We do, yeah.
Okay. Middle grade, okay. So I did this at a middle grade school. And what we did to try to break down those barriers and give the students a richer experience, okay, is that our engineering and technology teachers, while they have knowledge, they have deep technology knowledge, technological literacy knowledge, but they don't have deep mathematical knowledge or deep scientific knowledge, okay? So what we did, how we designed this, we still want the same outcomes, the students to learn about an integrated STEM experience. So we made this an inverse problem. And what we did, and I think I may have touched upon it in the chapter, is I designed a program called Teachers Teaching Together. And what we did was we came together and we got math teacher. I think that in some of the projects we had a math teacher or a geometry teacher. We had a science teacher, mostly physics science or physical science teacher. We had in it, we also had participating. Some classes have robotics as a separate class, but we had the engineering and technology teacher. So we always had somebody from the sciences, someone from mathematics, right? Someone from engineering and technology, right? And you could even add someone from the humanities, okay? And here's what we did. Here's how we designed it, okay? We want all of those good experiences, okay? But one teacher can't do that. So what we did is we agreed on a design problem, right? And we mirrored research. In my research, what we did is we were working on intercellular communication, which is a very complex scientific mystery. How do cells, when humans are being formed, or the current cells in your body, how do they communicate? How did my nose cells know where to go when they were developing noses, and how are my eye cells, how did my eye cells know where to go, right? They talk to each other, but we don't know how. We believe it's chemical. We believe that, I mean, if you look at cellular biologists, cellular biomedical biologists, they believe it's chemical. Okay, the problem that scientists are working on right now that we could use in our design problem is the scientists are working on how cells communicate. And we're using sensors, we're using electrical and computer engineering, microchip sensors to sense to see if we can hear that. So how do you bring grand challenges like that down to the learning space of a middle school or a high school? We adapt. How do cells communicate? Well, let's do this. How do ants communicate? We can handle ants, right? We've got ants in the schoolyard, and I can order wood ants. So we took teams of teachers, and we were going to challenge the students with a design problem of how do ants communicate. They had to design an experiment, science, right? They had to design a test bed, engineering and technology, right? And then they use a scientific method to try to determine how ants communicate. So what they did was, okay, first of all, we brought the students together in design teams. Okay, math students, common math student in a common teacher's class, science student in a common science teacher's class, engineering and technology students common in those classes. So what happened is we broke the students up in design teams, and they started to work on their problem. Okay, but remember, they had you as the math teacher and somebody else in the team as the science teacher and me as the engineering and technology teacher. So in our 3 classes, we're all talking about the design problem, right? So the math teacher is saying, how are we going to calculate, right? How are we going to know? How are we going to capture it? The science teacher is talking about, what kind of animal is an ant, right? What kind of capabilities does it have? And then the students come up with ideas. Right? Hypothesis. Well, we think that if we put candy in a habitat, the ants will go to the candy. And we think it's the candy. And we think it's the sugar in the candy that will get ants to move, right? I can get them. How are we going to do that? We have a test bed. What do you mean? We have ants. Well, if we put them all on the table, what are they going to do? They're going to go all over. So we've got to design a habitat in a test bed to execute our experiment, right? So the way that we designed it was that the teachers came together in the summer, the week before school started, and they mapped out, they blueprinted what they were going to teach in math, what they were going to teach in science, what they were going to teach in engineering and technology, that all related to the same design problem. Okay? They had lessons, the calculations, where they were in the math curriculum, in the science curriculum. And then the students worked on a long-term design project. Okay, 1 whole semester. Okay, and the goal at the end of the semester is we had a research poster session with the students. Okay. And what the students did, the design teams from math, science, and engineering and technology, is they came up with a science and math poster and an engineering and technology poster. Okay? And they presented their design solution to answer the question, how do ants communicate? Or what stimulates ants to move? And they had their test bed, and we had a bunch of different test beds, right? Habitats, and the students learned a lot of problem solving. For example, each of them got 1 little test tube of wood ants. There were 40 wood ants you order them from the science company. Okay. Well, if I take my wood ants out to test my test bed, at the end of the period, how do I get my wood ants back into their habitat? Oh, well, what I'll do is I'll use some tweezers. Well, if you squeeze them too hard, what are you going to do with them? Right? You're going to kill them. Okay. So I'll give you an example of how you turn students loose to create. Students took a small, to solve the problem, this one student, he took a small Tupperware canister, small Tupperware plastic, drilled a hole in the bottom, drilled a hole in the top, put cotton inside, stuck a straw in the bottom hole, stuck a straw in the top hole, and started sucking on the top straw. Okay? It was an ant vacuum cleaner. But he wouldn't suck up the ants because he put the cotton in the middle, right? Yeah. And he'd go around at the end of the period, sucking up their ants, vacuuming their ants up. Okay? Problem solving. And we did it long term. Now, since it was a whole semester, God dang it, we had another problem. We got to keep our ants alive for the semester, right? So now they had to research, like, what do ants really, what do they eat? How much water do they need? Water? Do they need sunlight? What do they need? Okay. Because you had a challenge, just like a scientist, just like an engineer, right? Taking people to Mars. Well, first of all, I got to keep them alive. So when we get there, right, we can't deliver a bunch of dead people to Mars. They got to be alive. So that's the way that you design a rich, integrated, school-based curriculum that is cross-cutting, including math teachers, including science teachers, including engineering and technology teachers, teaching these STEM teachers teaching together. But here's the thing. What is the common catalyst? The project-based learning, the problem solving, the design problem, right? The math teachers say the kids are much more excited about learning math because it's related to their design problem, right? The science teachers are saying, man, I can really relate to it because so engineering and technology design becomes the anchor, the catalyst. And that's why, okay, this is so important. That's why you must become instructional leaders too. The math teacher is not going to think about that. The science teacher is not going to think about that. You have to come up and say, hey, I've got a crazy, wild idea. And this crazy guy named De Miranda has done it before. And he did it with 350. I started the experiment. This took me like 5 years to perfect. Okay. I started the experiment it was about 70 students and it worked. And so we had a project and we expanded it. So I've done this with 373 students already, okay? And they love it. And at the end of the semester for the long-term design project, right? At the end of the semester, we have the poster sessions, we invite the parents, and we have cookies, and we have punch, and the students stand by their posters and tell everybody what they did. I have a video. I can share that with you later today if you'd like. I can email the video to you that you can share with your friends about the final poster session. That's how you deliver inventive, cross-cutting STEM education. Okay. Now let's unpack that for a minute. Let's go back to the first question. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about teachers. The cognitive load is no longer on one teacher, is it? It's shared. Okay. So now you've generated collaboration, you've generated a school-wide excitement, and now engineering and technology is the best, coolest place to be at the school, right? And all the kids are going, next year when I sign up for your class, can I be on can I do the project too? You know, that's the way we do it. We have to think, we have to lead, and we have to collaborate. And here's the other thing as technology teachers. You know how to do these things, but your math teachers don't. And your science teachers don't. So that's why you take the week before school starts and you plan this all out. And I have those tools I can share with you. We have the blueprint tools, and the teachers make the content tests, the tests along the way of the concepts that they're learning. Fantastic. Fantastic way to go. Yeah, really exciting.
Yeah, we love the idea, and we'd love to have those resources for future use for us. Now, this next question, you kind of already touched on a bit there,
Yeah.
but I'll repeat it to you anyways. So the
Yeah.
iSTEM approach focuses on integrated design problems and has an emphasis on fluency. How would
Yeah.
you properly design a classroom intervention or specific project that can effectively integrate humanities, arts, math, and physics principles to show students that STEM subjects do not have to be perceived as separate subject areas?
Right, right. Do you want to put up the diagram now, or can you do that?
Yep, we can put that diagram up there for you. You can go ahead.
You got it up? Okay. So I've got mine up as well. So if we look at the diagram here and we kind of unpack that question, okay? What we are doing is, let's use the example of the same design project for the students and ask the question, what stimulates ants to move, or how do ants communicate to move? Okay. There's a couple of reasons that we can bring to the students. Okay. First of all, in the left-hand side, we see interdisciplinary learning, which I touched on in my last example. Okay. But what we're really working on is bringing domain-specific content knowledge from math, from science, from social studies, language arts, right? Why do we need to understand how organisms communicate? Well, one of the reasons is that there is a social and scientific concern, is that we can look at the number of birth defects, okay? And we can look at how that impacts society. And if we could understand and predict them, and at some day prevent them, they would have huge social implications for human development. And so we are working at the core of this, okay? The second thing is that many of the projects have cultural impacts, okay? They could have cultural, or they could have social or humanities impacts. Now, as I stated before, in this iSTEM framework of learning and beginning to develop iSTEM pedagogical associational fluency, okay, the understanding is that we don't have to do all of these all at the same time. Okay. In the what stimulates ants to move design challenge that I described earlier, okay, we have some elements. We have interdisciplinary learning, we have technology and society, okay, and we have some social and environmental aspects. Okay. If we wanted to do social studies or language arts, okay, the science teacher could do with the language arts teachers something called writing to learn in science. So the students, okay, and I'll show you mine, okay, you have engineering notebooks, right? So all the students who are participating in the project, okay, this is my engineering notebook. I keep it with me all the time, okay? The students each learn what an engineering notebook is. And please mark this down. I will send you, for teachers, for beginning teachers, how to teach students to keep an engineering notebook. I have a complete presentation for that. So in the engineering notebook, they're writing to learn, they're reflecting. We've got interdisciplinary learning, we've got technology and society, and maybe a little bit of social and cultural. So we use this model, but we use the model carefully, okay? Because the model is not intended to be used all at once. Sometimes we're working on context, we're working on domain-specific knowledge. That means that the math teacher, when they're teaching mathematics, they're really teaching domain-specific knowledge, okay? But as we teach it, we grow as teachers. Our knowledge of pedagogy and then our pedagogy in specific contexts, right? In iSTEM, and they all unify in the center. Okay. And this is how we conceptualize a project or a curriculum that emphasizes interdisciplinary learning. Okay.
Perfect. So we'll move
oh.
on right away to the next question for you.
Okay.
So this will be our last one we prepared, and then we'll ask you one from the audience as well.
Fine.
Okay, so you end the chapter with making a statement about how leadership is needed to adapt, experiment, and try these transformational approaches. So how can we as future teachers garner the interest of our curriculum writers and school board members here in Newfoundland in order to make real change and implement an interdisciplinary approach across our school system here?
Yeah, great question. Great question. You know, most of our public are show me people, right? I think in Newfoundland, the people are very practical and they show me, right? So it takes some work. Now, they normally see the end product, okay? My end product in this experiment of iSTEM learning integrated in the middle schools is that we invited the parents. You've got to get the community involved. And the way that we did that was we got to give them a reason. And so we had a STEM showcase, right, at the end of each semester where the students showed, they made 2 posters, right? They used technology, you know, PowerPoint to make a large poster, right? And we used our plotter at the university, right? Because the middle schools don't have, some of them don't have, you know, 36-inch plotters or, you know. And the graduate students, we had a graduate student that, okay, this is a key element too. We had a graduate student from the university mentor each of the school teams. Okay. So the university students help the teacher, right? Help the students understand what a scientific poster was, right? What does it have on it? What are the elements on it? So it's not just building test beds and trying to figure out what stimulates ants to move. It's about what is your hypothesis, right? How are you going to test your hypothesis? What are the questions you're going to ask? What kind of data did you collect, right? What was your methodology? So that's all on the poster, right? And then the engineering poster has the design process, right? Of what the challenges were and what they did, okay? But the way for the leadership to happen is, let's talk about the leadership points. The first one is that the engineering and technology teacher needs to have the idea and needs to explain and share the idea with the math and science teachers, okay? Now, we had varieties of, remember, when you say science teacher, there's a variety of science teachers. Some are life science, some are biology, some are physics, right? And when you say math, there's a variety of math teachers. There's geometry teachers. There's algebra 1 teachers, right? There's general math teachers. So we adapt it to whatever their level is, okay? So the leadership is that we bring them along and we share the idea, okay? The second part of the leadership is to partner. You could partner with the university. We partnered, my university, I used my graduate students, right? And helped the kids. They were mentors and role models for the students, right? In between, we gave them presentations on what posters were, what scientific and engineering design methods were, what an engineering notebook was. Each of the students in the team, they didn't have one of these collegiate level, you know, engineering notebooks, right? They had those you can get them very inexpensively. They're called composition notebooks. Remember the little black ones, the little, yeah, the grid lines in them? Yeah, composition notebooks. They're $2 each, $1 $1.25 each. Okay, and we build in all of these support lessons along the way for the kids: design lessons, scientific problem solving lessons, engineering design lessons, sketching lessons, right? What to write in your engineering notebook. And we graded their notebooks, right? Because remember, engineering notebooks, okay, they begin with fundamental elements, okay, up in the corner: date, time, topic, right? No erasing. It is prohibited. Pasting ideas into your engineering notebook is permitted, right? And in the presentation that I'll send you on engineering notebooks, remind me there, I have examples of Thomas Edison's engineering notebook, okay, where he did not erase, he scribbled it out and stuff. So we show the kids how to sketch, how to ideate, all of these things. And that's the leadership that we provide. So it's fun. It's just not about the design and problem solving project. It's about all the fun things we learn along the way: posters, engineering notebooks, right? Experiments, design of experiments, and everything. And then at the end, we have our poster session. And you can do it at the community library. You can do it in the gym cafetorium. But you never heard that before, have you? Let's break it down. Gym, cafeteria, and auditorium, right? Isn't there that room in schools? It's called the gym cafetorium. Okay, you can have it in the gym cafetorium, right? And you have all of your posters up, and they're all on the walls and everything. And the parents come, and the kids are just excited to tell their parents what they worked on. And that's the way that engineering and technology education takes a leadership role in STEM education, leading in the community, right? So what we want to do at your university, okay, is the spirit of learn here, lead anywhere. That's what you have to start thinking about your program. Engineering and technology programs: learn here, lead anywhere. So that's the way that we exhibit leadership in this area. Reaching out, collaboration, ideas. I want to give one other item as well. You don't have to do this all at once either. Okay? If you find a friendly math teacher, right? Get together, share the design problem, right? And then ask the math teacher, I'm doing my underwater vehicle. There's principles that we're talking about. We're talking about buoyancy, right? We're talking about a lot of different science principles and math principles, right? And unpack them together and say, look, the kids that are in my class are in your math class. Why don't you talk about that? So this is what they're doing. Show them the underwater vehicle. They've never seen one before. You know, this is what we're building. Okay, so you can cover concepts, and the math teacher will start to click, right? They'll start to talk about mass. They'll start to talk about density. How do we measure them, right? All of these things. So you don't have to do it with a big team, all right? You can do it just you and another teacher, because we could just do one little element, right? Let's talk about an English teacher or a language teacher. We could talk about, can I share my kids' engineering notebooks with you? And I'd say, sure, I want to get my kids to write more, right? Well, heck, in my technology class, they have an engineering notebook. I'm an engineering and technology teacher. I don't know a damn thing about proper writing and grammar. And, can you do that? Can you help me with that? Can you come up with a writing assignment that I can give my students, right? So they can help you give writing assignments to write about, because the students have a lot to write about when they're doing their underwater vehicles, right?
Definitely.
So you don't have to do it with a whole bunch. You could start it with just the two of you. But it'll grow. It'll grow because the kids will be stimulated. And let me tell you, anything that you do in your classroom, the whole school knows about it because the kids leave their technology classroom and they're just doing what? They're talking about the fun that they had and things that they did, and right. And so let's lead. Let's lead. That's the leadership. But what I described doesn't take much, right? So leadership comes in many forms.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I think it applies to all of us watching that are pre-service technology teachers.
Your volume is kind of low on me, and I've got mine all the way up.
Sorry, I might be away from the mic a little bit, but I said
Okay.
thanks for that answer.
Better.
Obviously, it applies very well to me and Matt here, and also all the pre-service technology teachers who are watching this live stream and will watch it. So we just have one last question for you. It's a question from the audience. Just another one of our classmates who's a pre-service teacher as well. That question is, how do you see the future of interdisciplinary instruction evolving, and what role do you think it will play in the education system in the coming years?
Well, I think we need to take a page out of where kids are right now. They get information and misinformation, right, from multiple sources, right? They get it from Instagram, they get it from TikTok, they get it from YouTube, they get it from everywhere else, okay? So let's take a page out of that. Why can't they learn from multiple sources, right? So what we have to do is teach our students from where they're at, okay, and work ahead of them. And this is why in a school, the element of collaborative planning will be a key, because collaborative planning basically says, what is our message going to be to the students? But it'll be a unified message, right? So I'll use like the underwater vehicle design challenge that you're doing, right? If that becomes the center talking piece, and the math teacher can connect what they want to do to it, and the science teacher can connect concepts that they want to do it to it, okay, the information begins to come, right, from a variety of sources, okay? So I think the future is going to be more and more teachers not teaching in isolation, okay, but sharing, okay. I'll give you another inventive example, okay. I think the future, I think building leaders, principals, are going to need to start to break down the isolation of the individual classes, right? So as an engineering and technology teacher, okay, and you're doing a design problem with underwater vehicles, right? You should have the freedom to go into a math class and talk about the context, and then the teacher unpack the mathematic principles, right? Now that takes working together, right? And there are logistical things as well, okay? When Josh goes to another teacher's class to talk, either it's on Josh's planning period, right, when he doesn't have students, or something else has to happen, right? So there are structural pieces that can be solved to allow interdisciplinary learning to occur, okay? But we've got to get out of this mindset that I teach this subject and you teach this subject and you teach this subject. We don't do it that way, okay? We don't eat that way, okay? We don't boil the chicken, eat the chicken, and then put a half a teaspoon of salt in our mouth and then put some pepper in our mouth. No, we put the salt and the pepper on the chicken all at the same time, right? So we've got to teach these concepts all at the same time. And the key here is that the design problems become relatable. They're contextual. and they become the platform. So this is why we're leaders. We're leaders in interdisciplinary learning, because we have the tool belt, right? We have everything. We have all the pieces. Hope that helped.
Oh, definitely helped. Thank you so much for your insightful answers to our questions today. So that's going to be it for the interview. We appreciate your time spent with us, and we look forward to looking into those resources that you said you'd send us.
Yes, let's make sure that we make a note of them, and you can put them in an email, okay?
Yep.
But I have the engineering notebook presentation for you, right? And I have the poster session video, right? That shows the end product to the design problems that we did that challenged the students with the question, what stimulates ants to move, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see in the video, it's a beautiful video, students had all kinds of ideas. Some thought that light would stimulate ants to move. Some thought that heat would stimulate ants to move. Some people thought that food would stimulate ants to move. But really, we know that scientifically, ants communicate, right? Through some pheromone chemical process, right? So, but again, science teacher would love to have kids do that, right? So, and you'll see all the crazy test beds that the design students designed, to test their problems. So you had design in there, you've got science, hypothesis, scientific method in there, you got math in there, you got engineering notebook writing in there. And the kids brought their engineering notebooks to the presentation too, so they could open them and show and everything like that. So it is exciting time to be a engineering and technology teacher. Your country and our world democracies are depending on you. Now is our time to lead. So I wish you all the very, very best, and know that we are proud of you and what you are doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. And have a wonderful rest of your career. And I hope that our paths cross at some point.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Take care now.